All right, so what are we going to do? I thought I saw somebody with was trying to write something. I'm not sure. And I think somebody also raised their hand earlier. Regina, maybe? I'm not sure. But then I couldn't really do anything because the PowerPoint was uploading. I couldn't unmute myself to give you a chance to say what you needed to say. So was that the case? Did somebody raise their hand earlier? Adelaide. What? But then it shows that it's locked. Okay, never mind. So the day before yesterday, what did we talk about? We looked into the definitions of what traditional assessment is, alternative assessment is, and performance-based assessment is as well. All right. What else? Yeah, that's what we talked about. But then we did not finish everything about the characteristics of performance-based assessment. What were we talking about? Like, what was the next thing that we're going to talk about? Does anybody remember? Anyone? Or was I basically talking to myself? And can you hear me? By the way, I should have asked that first. Can you hear me? Yes or no?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So the next aspect that we're going to look at was we ended there, and then we're looking at how performance-based aspect. So here we say that it stimulates the development of other dimensions of learning, so affective, psychomotor, and cognitive domains. And now we're going to look at how then does performance-based assessment affect or has an impact on other dimensional aspects of the learners. All right, and the first thing that we're going to look at is the affective aspect. How does the performance-based assessment affect the or contribute to the affective aspect? Sorry, I was distracted there for a little bit. Okay, when we have affective, when we're talking about affective, this have everything to do with the emotions, how our feelings drive us, right? So that is the affective, is the emotion part of the human being. When it comes to performance-based assessment, then regarding the affective aspect, performance-based education motivates the learners to participate in interesting and meaningful tasks. All right. So they are interesting, which means they would drive their emotions in some ways. And then the task, since they are meaningful, they can connect it to their lives, then they will be motivated to partake in these activities. And it also helps the learners develop a sense of pride to their work, and then create confidence in them when they are learning. All right. And then it also encourages the learners to experiment with their increasing control of whatever that they are learning, and also alleviate, so which means to cut down on the anxiety of making mistakes. All right. Is the anxiety sometimes when you have a classroom, the learners do not participate in the classroom because they are so afraid of making mistakes. All right. And then now when they have the confidence, and then knowing that even if they make mistake is acceptable, that's how they learn, then they will be encouraged to participate in their own learning process. And the performance-based assessment also further motivates the learners to invest, to put more effort in their own learning of whatever content that is presented to them. All right. And yeah, that's what we have now regarding affective aspect when it comes to performance-based assessment. And then moving on to the social aspect. So the social has everything to do with the community, all right, community-based engagement. So when it comes to the social aspect of learning, which can be seen or reflected in the interactions that the learners have with their peers. All right. And with performance-based assessment, the learners are required to partake in this interaction. And then the learners also, because they are engaged with other students or other learners rather, you will see, it's believed that it's through this interaction that they can develop helpful social skills. Helpful social skills, such as helpful social skills, such as cooperating. Such as cooperative work, which lead to peer guidance, and then other kinds of social interactions, such as negotiating, reaching a consensus. So they have to come to an agreement, respecting other people's opinions, and then also respect other people's or their peers' contribution to the group effort, and then share responsibility in whatever task that they do in the classroom for that task to be completed. Okay, and then when it comes to the metacognitive aspect, so metacognition is having one person or having a person think about their own thinking, like what is happening in their mind. All right, and this metacognition is it's regarded as a useful mechanism to help the learners learn, or students even, and then for it. How do you say this? All right, it is a useful tool to help the learners, enhance their own learning, both in the immediate outcomes and also for helping them to understand their own learning process, like what happens when they are learning. Why are they not getting certain things? Why is certain concept really easy for them to do, for example? So they think about that, like they really do think about what is happening in their mind when they are learning. All right. As for the metacognitive aspects of learning, so here we have got learners thinking about their own learning. Skills such as reflection, self-assessment also contributes to the learning process. So here you engage your learners in reflection and also have them assess themselves. All right. And this is when now the teacher requires learners to think about what they are learning, how they are learning, and how well they are really progressing in what they're learning. Okay. So that's what we have in that regard. And then when it comes to performance-based assessment, it has got advantages. And then when we are using performance-based assessment, this way of assessment helps the learners to demonstrate specific skills and competencies by performing and producing something, not just not just reciting or repeating or regurgitating what they have learned, but rather they are showing what they have learned by doing a certain task, right? It can also help the learners, the teachers, to assess both what the learners can do, like having a specific benchmark, having certain standard already set up to assess the learners, and what they have achieved with a specific teaching program based on the curriculum standards. So here, that's what performance-based can afford the teachers. And then besides focusing on the quality of the product that the learners work on, performance-based assessment also rates the learner's learning process. I think we've mentioned that a little bit earlier. And then assessing both the product and the process of what the learners, okay, the product, so whatever task that they have completed, and also the process to finish this product that they have created or completed. And when we look at both the product and the process, it gives us a better picture of what the learner's ability is. All right, it gives us a better or even more accurate profile of what the learner is able to do. And then the teachers then can track the learner's work on a task and show them the value of their own work process, help them self-monitor so that they can use the tools such as periodic reflection. So we've spoken about reflection already, working files and learning logs more effectively. So here, this approach really motivate or encourage the learner to be an independent and a critical individual within the classroom, all right? Rather than the teacher having control over the learning and everything else that happens in the classroom, here we are encouraging the learners to really be independent and critical individuals who can survive or be functional in society, okay? And there are certain type of activities that performance-based assessment afford the learners. And then here, Wiggins believe that these activities seem to be more, or he believes, or she, I don't know if Wiggins is a she or he, believes that these activities can be more enticing, can be more attractive to the learners than the usual pen and paper test. All right. And some of the examples of the activities that he thinks or she thinks that are going to be more attractive to the learners are designing and constructing a model, develop, conduct, and report the results of a survey, for example, perform a science experiment or whatever experiment that is you have in your subject, write a mock letter to an editor of a newspaper, like more realistic, task. And even for me, looking at these activities, I feel like they are more, they are more fun and more engaging than the usual pen and paper. All right. And then that's what I think. I don't know about you guys, but I think these activities they do contribute. I mean, they are more attractive, more engaging, more meaningful than the pen and paper. So that's performance-based assessment is a product and a behavior-based measurement based on setting designed to emulate real-life context or condition in which specific knowledge and skills are actually applied. So as I've mentioned earlier, the things... oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry. So this is the thing. It's like I feel like I'm just talking to myself, basically. Okay, so we spoke. Okay, it stopped at metacognitive. I'm so sorry. And then we spoke about the advantages of performance-based. I hope you were listening, though, to my voice. And sorry for those who are more visual. And then we spoke about the activities. All right. And now we are here at this conclusion of what performance-based assessment look at. It looks at the product and the process. And the process here is what now one can refer to as behavior-based measurement, all right? And I've also mentioned that these activities that we do in the classroom or you will do in the classroom, they are more, they reflect more of what happens in the real world. And I feel like that's where we are moving, even with, I don't know if I've spoken to your class about the restructuring of the university, how do they call it? Oh my God, I'm blanking out. It's very early in the morning. What is the university doing right now? We're in the process of curriculum transformation. Oh my God, Kaunapala. Curriculum transformation. So here the idea is for us to move away from the constant having learners memorize content and then replicating or doing this pen and paper test and multiple choice type of questions. Do you understand? So we are trying to move away from that so that students develop skills that are more meaningful, that are more functional, and more useful in the real world. All right. So the idea here is also the same, that moving away from traditional, not so much of moving away completely, but we'll have I think when we come to a conclusion there later in the lesson, we'll see that not moving away altogether from the traditional, but strike a balance. All right, advancing. What does that mean, Hilaria, my darling? Well, the idea is for us to advance. So what do you mean by advancing? I'm sorry. Anyways, now we are moving on. So when it comes to authentic assessment plus performance-based assessment, it encourages us as teachers to integrate both teaching, learning, and assessment in an equal manner. So all these aspects, all these three aspects, they all contribute equally in the in education. All right, not just looking at the teaching itself or just the assessment itself or the learning itself, but rather all these aspects contribute equally. Okay, so that's what they have there. All right, and that's all that we have regarding the characteristics of traditional that we've done yesterday, alternative that we've also covered yesterday, and definition, as well as performance-based assessment. Do you have any questions? Questions thus far? I'm just, yes? Yes, Hilaria, go ahead, my dear. You can unmute yourself and say whatever that you need to say. You don't have to type. You don't always have to type. Oh, no questions. Oh, okay. All right, cool. Let's move on. Now we are going to look at the second objective, which is discussing, right, in more details, the similarities and differences between traditional assessment, alternative assessment, and performance-based assessment. Okay. Okay, I hope I didn't go further. Okay, cool. And here we go. So when it comes to, all right, it is believed that the performance-based assessment is becoming more popular. It's becoming more popular. And then this popularity began in, they say, 1980s and 1990s, mainly because some of the educators were very, very dissatisfied by the traditional multiple choice type of questions, for example, type of tests, all right? And then in the early 20th century, performance-based assessment then moved to become more of a trend, more popular, all right? And then it's also have been then accepted as a good method of teaching and learning. While the traditional, okay, so when it comes to traditional assessment, then generally the type of items here we're talking about the type of questions that are used. They are the multiple choice, fill in the blank, true or false, matching types of problems. And then this type of questions, they don't really require much from the learners other than expecting the learners to recall the information that they have been taught. All right, and then the skills that is being tested is not so much of an understanding of what they have been presented with, but rather the memory power of the learners. The focus most of the traditional assessment is on developing productive citizens by imparting knowledge. And I think this is already what we have covered earlier. So it's like you give the learners knowledge and then you test them on that knowledge, not what they understand, but rather what they remember about what you have taught them. And then the curriculum is the driving force behind the assessment. And so it's like you test them on what you have taught them. So the curriculum, so what you taught them, and then the assessment comes after. All right. And then it indicates that the content of what the learner, the content that the, okay, no, I've already mentioned that. It's like the content is what is being tested. And then traditional assessments are concerned with the what aspect of things. And then, and it emphasizes competition. It's like, okay, who is the highest in the classroom? Not so much of like how many of the learners have understood. And then on the other hand, when it comes to authentic / alternative assessment, here the expectation is more on practical and hands-on. Okay, so you understand by hands-on. I think by now you should, right? You are fourth year students. I hope you do. Like it focuses more on hands-on, like hands-on activities that the learners can really do, all right, using their hands, for example, in other words. And hands-on activity. And then it moves away from activities that just requires them to regurgitate, to recall the information. They are expected to complete tasks that are more real life, more related to what is happening in the real world. All right. And here the focus then with alternative assessment, the focus is on developing productive citizens who are equipped to handle problems and not just to walk around with a book knowledge, all right? So, which I also constantly, encourage students to move away from just memorizing content, but rather getting skills that you can use outside the classroom, all right? Both the AA, so AA here, you can see here, AA is authentic assessment or alternative assessment, really focuses on the how of the knowledge, like emphasize on cooperation rather than competition, like traditional assessment does. And then alternative assessment is motivated or driven by constructivism. And then it's more, I think it's becoming more apparent that it's becoming more famous. I don't know. When you went to schools, did you see students working more on authentic types of activities, or is it more traditional still? What was your experience? And for you to give your answer, you can write TA or AA, or if both. All right? More traditional still. Oh, that's unfortunate. I want you guys to write. What was your experience? More traditional still, AA? And okay. TA more. Authentic. Okay, TA. Okay. Yeah, so in theory then, okay, maybe so here we can see that TA is more, right? I guess we can say that in theory, and then even when you go to schools, when you read education policies, even your syllabus, I hope, it shows that in theory they want us to move towards AA. All right. So the idea of like learner-centered education, having, if you look at the principles and the aims that they hope that we accomplish in subjects, like when you read the syllabus, they want the learners to be cooperative, for example, rather than competitive. developing different kind of aspects rather than that, just the knowledge part, right? So in theory, AA is supposed to be more famous, right? And it's encouraged. But then I think that's going to work a little bit more if we train our teachers, right, and student teachers on how then to really assess and how to engage in such assessment. Okay, and what else? Now let's look at the table here. Most of this information we've already spoken about, right? We have got aspects of when it comes to TA. Here we've got selecting a response. So for example, multiple choice has got either 4 or 3 options where the learners will select. Matching, the answers are already there. It's just a matter of them matching these aspects, right? But then when it comes to authentic, you can see that, as we have mentioned, it's performance-based. And then it's real life related, all right? This one is contrived, which means it's just created in such a way that okay, how do I explain this? So it's just created in a fictional setting. It's really never a real life related. All right, so that's what they think. And then the learners are expected to recall and recognize the information that they have, all right? But then when it comes to AA, here the learners are expected to construct knowledge and then apply the knowledge that they have gained. And then here we saw that is teacher structured, but then AA, excuse me, it's learner structured. And then we have got now indirect evidence, because here you, as a teacher, you have knowledge, you pour it into the learners' minds, and then from the test that you give them, you hope that it shows that they know what you have taught them. But then this one, AA, on the other hand, in AA, it's more direct evidence because the learners are performing. It's through their performance that shows that they understand. All right. For example, if you have taught them information on carrying out an experiment, if this experiment is not successful in some ways, then that shows that they know or do not know. Okay, if it's not successful, then maybe they do not know. They messed up some way. All right. And then the curriculum drives the assessment. So here the curriculum drives the assessment. It's like whatever that you teach them is what is what determines what is going to be assessed. But then in AA, in this model, assessment drives the curriculum. So that is, the teachers first determine the tasks that the learners will perform to demonstrate their mastery, and then the curriculum is developed that will enable learners to perform those tasks as well. So which would include acquisition of essential knowledge and skills. And then this is now what we call the backward design. So you start with a task, basically, not just the curriculum and then you assess. No. Okay. And moving on, when we have the tests in TA, the tests are inauthentic, and here they are authentic. So you understand the difference between authentic and inauthentic, right? Yes or no? When you're talking about an authentic task or an authentic test. Do you understand? Yes or no? Ladies and gentlemen, you have to say something. Yes or no? Oh, can you not hear? Oh, okay. Yes, Simon, go ahead.
Yes, Miss. Unauthentic simply means not original, and authentic means original test. Something that is original. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I do agree. Thank you very much, Simon. As we have spoken about real life activities, authentic entails real life tasks. All right. And then, but then on the traditional, is contrived, is created for the purpose of testing and not so much of related to real life. And I think in the last class we spoke about how the tasks need to reflect what really happens in the real world, and that's what happens in the authentic aspect. All right, so authentic, it has everything to do with that. If somebody say that, oh, you are very authentic, or if they say you are inauthentic, it's like you are fake, you're not real. Do you understand? But then if you are authentic, it's like you're real, like you express yourself in reality and your opinion, and you just don't copy what other people are saying or thinking and doing. Do you understand? So it's in this in the relation to that. And then here we have got individual projects, and then we saw that they say that in traditional there is the aspect of developing competition, but then here in authentic they said cooperation, cooperative skills, right? And then cooperative skills work with group work, because you'll be working with somebody, you are not competing with another person. And then they say that no feedback is really provided to the learners, but rather just give them the score. But then here feedback is provided, like how do they perform? How do they improve? Do you understand? And then speeded examination, because it's like there's always timed test. Do you understand those type of examination? And then here they do believe that there's no restriction on the timed examination. I mean, still you give them time of when they should complete a certain task, but then they are not rushed all the time. And then decontextualized tests. So as we have said, is contrived test that is just created for the purpose of testing, but not reflecting what's really happening around. All right, contextualize is like you have to think about the environment and then creating tasks related to that environment. And then norm reference scores, like who is the first, who is the second, who is the third. Do you understand? But then criterion here is just looking at, have they attained the standards and criteria that we have set up? And then standardized test. All right. So standardized test is like there are certain standards that you want to see if the learners have passed. All right. But then this one is more classroom-based kind of test. What is really happening? I mean, the tests are classroom-based. How do you say that? So when you have things like projects that they have to work on, projects that they need to work on, they happen within the classroom, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the normal examination pen and paper test that we usually use. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Kind of lost myself there too. And then next. So what do we have? So when it comes to TAs, so traditional assessment and AAs, they are very different. We can see that they are very, 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 very different. But then as teachers, we don't necessarily need to choose between the two. All right, between the two system of assessment. The idea is for us as educators to find a balance, to strike a balance between the traditional and authentic assessment that meets the learner's needs best. All right, so you look at your learners and then you see what will really work best. Don't just gravitate more on alternative altogether, but also use the traditional as well. And then again, I mean, even now when we move our examination here at UNAM, when we move it online, you will see that still some of the content that you do is authentic. Do you understand? It reflects real life, but then we use the type of questions that are used in our traditional, right? Like things like multiple choice, not necessarily essay altogether. But then again, it depends on what field that you're doing or measure that you are taking, all right? So the idea is for us to really strike a balance of what works and be realistic and not just choose what is easy, but expose the learners to different kind of assessment and also set your assessment with a purpose and also thinking about your audience, your students. Okay, and now we are moving on. So here again, this information is just emphasizing on what we have already covered and the things that we have already spoken about. But before we go on to this, do you have questions, yes or no? And how are we doing on time? All right. Any questions? No questions. All right, let's move on. Well understood. Awesome. Okay. Moving on. So when it comes to TA, traditional assessment assumes knowledge has a single conceptual meaning. That is now to say that whatever that you teach your students, it's what they have to say, or it's what they have to recall, it's what they have to remember. All right. They have no say in interpreting what you have taught them. But then when it comes to alternative, on the other hand, you can see that it assumes that there's multiple meaning. There's not only one exact answer. There are multiple answers, correct answers to whatever that you, or multiple meaning in this case, to whatever that you have taught. Okay. And then here it believes that learning is passive. However, this one obviously thinks that learning is an active process. All right. So you understand by passive, right? Passive is like you just sit there, you really don't have a say much. It's like you're an empty vessel that needs to be filled, and then you say what you have been filled. But then on the other hand, this one is like, you are active in your learning, you reflect on learning, you even assess yourself. And then there's a separation, it separates the process from the product. The focus is more on the product. All right. It's like the test, the final product is the one that is being assessed, but then it has nothing to do with how have the learners learned? What was involved in their learning to come up with this product? Do you understand? Which is what happens in the alternative assessment. Yes, Lysias, do you have something to say? Or no? He disappeared. Okay, bye. And then next, traditional assessment focuses on mastering bits of information. Oh, you're back. Do you want to say something, Lysias? Oh, never mind. Okay, it focuses on mastering bits of information.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes, go ahead. Yes, Lysias? Miss? I cannot hear. Oh, do you guys, guys and girls, could you hear Lysias? I can't. Anyways, okay. Yes? I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. Okay, let's just move on for a little bit. Lysias, you can go ahead and type. Okay. And then it focuses on mastering bits of information. It's like there's certain information that you give them, and the type of skills that they use are the lower level skills. And if you remember, okay, you should type. Okay, if you remember, oh wait, remember is one of the lower level skills. All right, understanding, those are the lower level skills that are used in traditional assessment. All right, requires lower living. Oh my God, lower thinking skills, lower order thinking skills that are required when we are assessing the learners. However, when it comes to alternative, it focuses on inquiry, which means that inquiry, like things like research and going beyond, like questioning what is happening, and those are now the types of tasks that requires learners to use their high level or high order thinking skills. Okay, and let's move on. And then Traditional assessment assumes that the purpose of assessment is to test knowledge. So this is like self-explanatory because I've really spoken about that. While the alternative assessment, yes, Maria? I hope you heard me. Yes, Maria, you raised your hand, or was that a mistake? Okay, it's a mistake. And then alternative, on the other hand, assumes the purpose of assumes that the purpose of assessment is to facilitate learning, is to help with learning, all right? Not just to test knowledge, but to help with learning. And then here, believes cognitive, affective, social abilities are separate. So learners' thoughts are not really considered. How to carry out the task is also not considered. So we have spoken about cognitive, we've talked about affective, we've talked about metacognitive as well earlier, and it has nothing to do with traditional. That has everything to do with alternative, because they believe that we are assessing the learner as a whole. So holistic assessment, considering all these other aspects of an individual. But here they just look at cognitive knowledge, basically. All right. And then next, traditional assessment views assessment as objective. All right. Value-free and neutral. And when you're talking about objective, is that we are saying that it's an assessment that is not influenced by emotions. So things like affective aspects and the emotions, the opinion, personal feelings do not affect their knowledge, right? However, the subjective, which is what happens in the alternative, they do believe that there is multiple interpretation to knowledge or meaning, because we have got all these personal opinions, emotion, and aesthetics that contribute to these multiple responses that we may get. All right. And then subjective also believes or trust in considering the assumption, the beliefs, the opinions, emotions, personal feelings of a person, that they all contribute to how the person learns. All right. And how they answer. But then that is not what happens in the traditional assessment. It's like any of their opinion, feelings, opinion, assumption, beliefs, they really have nothing, they don't influence the responses that the learners give. And then next, okay, how much more do we have? Yes, so this is the last one here. Okay, we'll finish there. And then traditional assessment embraces hierarchical model of power, which means, the teacher is on top of the hierarchy of power, the learners are down there, and they don't make any contribution towards the decisions that are made in the classroom. All right, but in contrast to alternative, here it's like power is shared. Learners can decide. You say that, okay, you have a presentation on, you have a presentation whereby you find a problem and then you find solution, do you understand? And then you carry out a research, for example. You can say that in an alternative assessment. And then here the learners will choose which problem are they going to look at? How are they going to present it? Do you understand? So they have a say on things like that. But then when it comes to traditional, they don't really have to have a say. You tell them that, oh, you have to solve a problem on, let's say, what problem can they have? Okay, cool. Let's say you choose a topic like bullying, and then they have to find solutions to that, all right? But then here they can have control over that, and then they can make decisions. They have opinions even on the class rules, for instance. Do you understand? But then in traditional, they don't really have a say on that, like how the test is going to be, like the content, like they have no say on that. And then traditional perceive learning as an individual enterprise. That's why they emphasized on competition. It's like every man for himself, all right, or every woman for herself, for herself, yes. Do you understand? It's like everybody really has to learn on their own. But then alternative, on the other hand, focuses on collaborative process. Do you understand? It's like they have to work together, the group work idea. And then the traditional is more teacher-centered, as we have already spoken about, while alternative assessment is more learner-centered, student-centered. Okay, so that's what we have in that regard, like that information. Do you guys have questions? Guys and girls, everybody, do you have a question so far? Any questions? Simon? Oh no, it was Lysias. Lysias, you were trying to say something, but you never did. I hope you are still here. We lost Lysias, I think. Or maybe he wanted to say that he's leaving class. Maybe. Questions? Comments? Hello. You have to say something or write something, type something. No questions? Okay. Okay. Priscilla is writing and Natalia is writing. Priscilla was saying something, but she stopped. And Natalia. Okay, TV is typing something, but it's taking a little bit of time. Oh. Practical, yeah, lab practicals are considered as AA, yes. Okay, so today we're going to end there because next we'll talk about the attributes of traditional and performance-based, because if I start, I'll not finish. It's like already 23 minutes and I don't want to go beyond, and I don't want you to, when you go and teach, get into the habit of like going over your time, all right? I don't want you to have that habit at all. And so for this class, we looked at other aspects that performance-based influence. What are those aspects? Quickly. Performance-based as the other aspects of a learner as an individual that is affected by or influences or influenced by assessment, by performance-based assessment. Anyone? What are those aspects? You can just mention one and then the next person mention the other, and you're welcome to raise your hands and say stuff that we've covered. Yes, affective aspects. What else?
Social, I think.
Yes. Shafilao, what did you say? Yeah, social as well. And then we spoke about meta cognitive as well. Yes, thank you very much. Dilime. Okay, I can see the rest of it. Okay, Dili, thank you very much. All right, and then we've also looked at the difference between traditional and alternative. All right, so we have spoken about those, like the differences and similarities. And similarities are more with alternative, with performance-based, but not so much with traditional. Traditional is a little bit different from the other types of assessment. Okay, so that's what we spoke about, and we spoke about their natures and their differences in more details. So that's what we did today. And tomorrow is Friday, right? Okay, tomorrow we have class. So tomorrow we'll talk about the attribute of traditional and performance-based assessment, and then we'll also talk about what else? The advantages of performance-based assessment. So that's what we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk about the planning of the traditional assessment and alternative assessment, and the planning of that, and then the criteria for planning and the assessment format. So that's what we're going to look at, and the steps to creating authentic assessment, right? So that's what we're going to cover tomorrow, and I hope we'll finish Unit 4 tomorrow. If not, we can always continue next week because we still have ample time to cover our content. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Miss,
Yes. Is this Ndili? Yes, go ahead.
I was still having an assessment this semester.
What do you mean? A test?
The test or
Of
A?
course, darling. Yes, you will have 3 more tests. Wait, we have got Unit 4, 5, 6, and then you have a test. 7, 8, 9, 10, and another test. So I think 2 more tests. Or should we do 4, 5 tests? 6, 7 tests? 8, 9 tests? Should we have 3 more assessments? What do you think? So here we are now applying our alternative assessment approach, or we are, how do you say, you have more power. No assignment, no assignments.
You're right.
It's just tests. Or should we do an assignment? Do you want an assignment? I mean, I also have to consider the other lecturers. For what we have done last semester, for example, we do same kind of assessment with lecturers from Commercial Campus, with lecturers from HP. We just did tests, all right? But then if the other lecturers do agree to one assignment, then we'll do an assignment, okay? We could work on that, but then I have to consult them. All right, I'll get back to you, Kaino, on that, if we're gonna do an assignment or not. All right, and okay, Kaino is saying something. Okay, all right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our lesson. I will see you tomorrow. What time is our class? Oh, Lacey, yes, you're back. What time is our class tomorrow? Yes, Helia? Helia, you raised your hand. Yes, go ahead, my dear. Oh, there was Hilaria, and this is Helia. Oh, gosh. Assessment class tomorrow is it? Tomorrow is Friday, is it? 1:30. Oh, thank you, Prisca. Oh, Priscilla. Prisca. Oh my gosh. Terrible. Helia, Jeremiah, my dear, you raised your hand. Do you want to say something before we close off? Okay, maybe not. All right. Thank you so much for coming to class. See you at 1:30 tomorrow. Bye. Bye, everyone. Should I exit? Or what's happening?